Hey, what's up you guys? This is Tyler from the Harringtons, or back today with a brand new video. Now today I want to talk to you guys about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is my beloved C100, which is being used to film me right now. And I just want to talk about my thoughts about the C100 and the sort of the status of cameras and things like that in wedding filmmaking today. So if you guys remember, a little over a year ago, last year when the GH5 was announced, before it had ever come out, before anybody had their hands on one, I made a video about the GH5, and I predicted that it was not going to be very good for weddings. I just didn't think, based on the GH4, that the GH5 was going to be a great wedding camera. That was my opinion at the time. I hadn't seen any footage, hadn't seen anything. It was purely based off speculation. Fast forward to today, and it seems like everybody is jumping ship and moving over to the GH5. Not everybody, but a lot of people are moving off of Sony, moving off of Canon, and moving over to the GH5. And it's been very, very interesting for me to watch over the past year or so as people have been jumping on to the GH5 bandwagon. And I honestly have been very surprised and very impressed with the results of this camera. It's producing an amazing image, and people who are using it are shooting fantastic, beautiful, beautiful weddings with it. So what I want to talk about today is I don't want to talk about the GH5, and this is definitely not a bashing video of the GH5. I think the GH5 is a great camera, and I think the GH5 has some amazing things going for it. But like all cameras, there are pros and cons. So instead of talking about that today, I really just want to talk about the C100, why I love the C100, and why I choose to use this as my main camera for shooting weddings. So this video is not intended to make you switch off a GH5 and to say that C100 is the best camera in the world and that everyone should buy it or anything like that. I really just kind of want to share my thoughts, my opinions on why I love the C100 and the things that I'm looking for in a camera and why it sort of fills all those things for me, so that if you're out there and you're trying to decide what camera to buy and maybe you have similar needs as me and the things that I value are also important to you, that you might consider looking into the C100, because I do kind of feel like the C100 is a little bit of an underrated camera. I think that has a lot of really great things going for it. And I think that because it doesn't shoot 4K, it kind of just gets swept to the side and no one even really considers it. So I just really want to talk about the reasons why I love it and what makes it really work well for me. So personally, my needs as a filmmaker is first and foremost, I'm a wedding filmmaker. That's what we do more than anything else, is we film weddings. And secondly, I make YouTube videos and things like this, as well as do a lot of corporate things. So I help make courses for photographers, courses for ourselves, and we do a lot of like interviews, kind of talking heads, commercially type things. So for those specific use cases, I find that the C100 works really, really well and fits all the different things that I need. So what's really crazy is that the C100 Mark I was announced on August 29th, 2012. 2012. Over 5 years ago, this camera was announced, and I'm still using it as our secondary camera. We just picked up this camera right here, which is the C100 Mark II, which came out more recently, but the C100 Mark I came out in 2012. And I think that's just kind of like crazy to think about how much technology has changed since then and how the landscape of filmmaking has changed. But I still use this camera, and I still would recommend this as a great camera for people to buy all these years later. Why is that? What makes this camera so special and so unique? Well, let's run down the specs. So the first thing that I absolutely love about the C100 cameras is they have really amazing battery life. The battery on the C100 it's just big. It's a big battery, and it lasts all day long. So for me, shooting a wedding, a typical 8 to 10 hour long wedding day, I will change batteries one time during the reception. When I get to the reception, usually that's the time where I'll switch up my battery. I don't have to swap it out then. I still usually have plenty of battery life left on the battery, but I always switch it out then just to be safe. So I can use 2 batteries, and that will last me an entire wedding day without ever having to really think about it. So that is just really, really great. If you guys have ever shot weddings before and you're carrying around pockets full of batteries or bags full of batteries, there's nothing more stressful than filming a long ceremony, and not knowing, are my batteries going to last through the entire ceremony or not? So that is one thing I really love about the C100. The next thing I really love about the C100 is the file sizes. So the C100 shoot in the AVC HD format. Now this is a very efficient codec. I don't really know all the mumbo jumbo, all the science behind it. All I know is that the file sizes I get out of this camera are tiny. They're tiny compared to my DSLR, and they're definitely tiny compared to like a 4K mirrorless, something like that. So I can shoot an entire wedding day on 32 gigs of space or less. I only put 32 gig cards into my C100s, and I have never ever once on a wedding day filled up an entire card. That is crazy. When I shot with the 5D Mark III, and I was using that as my primary camera, still shooting 1080p, 24 frames per second, I was using between 80 and 90 gigs per wedding, still shooting in 1080p. I know that there's guys out there who are shooting with, in 4K for weddings on the A7Ss and GH5s that are shooting, close to 200 gigs per wedding. And if you go into like the 5D Mark IV that has a really awful codec for 4K, you're talking like hundreds and hundreds of gigs. The C100 is great because the file sizes are tiny, less than 32 gigs for an entire wedding as my A cam, and that's including rolling through the entire ceremony, long speeches, literally everything. One set of 32 gig cards, which leads me to my next thing I really love is that the C100 has dual card slots. So I can put two 32 gig cards into my camera, close the door, and it's going to be recording to each of those simultaneously throughout the day. I don't ever have to worry about transferring. It's the exact same thing on both cards. And it just gives me peace of mind that if one card were to get corrupted, if I were to lose a card, which I've actually done once at a wedding, don't ask me how, or anything were to happen to one of the cards, I know that I have a cloned copy, an immediate backup right there. The next thing I really love about the C100 cameras is just their button layout and the ease of use. If you look at these cameras, there are buttons everywhere. There are tons and tons of customizable buttons on the side, on the back, on the handle. They're all over the place. So you can really customize this thing to work best for you and what your needs are. And I've just found that it just makes it really, really easy to navigate the camera, to change settings on the fly. You can pretty much customize everything. So I just really love the ability to reach out and know exactly where the different buttons are. And if they're not where I want them, I can customize them to be wherever I want. So I can move really, really quickly with this camera. The next thing I love, which is honestly probably one of like the hardest things for me to imagine losing, I can imagine losing some of the buttons and some of the functionality and some of the things about the C100, but the one thing about the C100 that I think is gonna make it really hard for me to ever switch back to a DSLR or mirrorless camera is the Builtin ND filters. Now, basically what these are sunglasses inside of the camera, and all I have to do is roll a little dial on the side of the camera and I instantly have ND applied to any lens. There's no screwing filters on, there's no guesswork, there's no anything like that. I always have ND filters right where I need them, and they're super, super easy to flip on. Now, what I love about this so much for weddings is that it helps me to preserve the correct shutter speed. So I'm always shooting 1/48th of a second at 24p, and that gives me that really cinematic, really great looking motion blur between my frames, even outside, even at really wide apertures. I love shooting not completely wide open, but really wide apertures, 2.0, 2.2, somewhere around there. And having ND filters allows me to shoot at those apertures outside without having to jack my shutter up really, really high. And it's just super convenient. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you don't think it's that big of a deal until you've had it. And now I can't imagine living without it. So I absolutely love the Builtin ND filters. The next thing I love, which may not be super important to you on a wedding day, depending on how you like to work, is the Builtin XLR. So the nice thing about the C100 is that it's modular, so the side handle comes off and the top handle comes off. But within that top handle, you have the ability to plug in XLR ports. So this is really great for me on a wedding day because I like to use an NTG4 Plus shotgun microphone on top of my camera for things like reading the notes with the bride and groom beforehand. And it just gives me really great audio from getting ready, prep, all that kind of stuff. So that allows me to plug that into the camera using XLR without having to use any sort of an adapter. And it gives me the ability to have two different channels of XLR actually, so I can do the shotgun mic as well as I have a XLR input for my wireless lav system and just anything else you might want to use. So this is really great for weddings, but it's also really great for YouTube. So right now I'm actually recording with the NTG4 Plus right here, and it's running straight into the XLR port on the C100. So I don't have to do anything with syncing and post. I don't have to use an external recorder, anything like that. I have all my audio running straight into the camera right now. I'm able to monitor it. I'm able to adjust the levels per channel, and it's good to go. Another really great thing that I love about the C100 is all of the advanced camera features. So this is a dedicated video camera. It is purely made for shooting video. Unlike DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, which are dual purpose, so they have photography capabilities and video capabilities, the C100 is just a video camera. And with that, it comes with some very video specific features. So I'm talking about things like focus peaking, where it'll show me with an indicator on the screen exactly what's in focus. Zebras will help me get my exposure. A waveform monitor, one of my favorite features of the entire camera, helps me to make sure I know for a fact that my exposure is dialed in and is perfect. There's no guesswork involved. Unlimited recording times, the ability to punch in while recording. And while yes, there are other cameras that have some of these features and some of them have a lot of these features, very few have all of these features. And I just love the ability to know. I'm a very analytical type person, so I like to know for a fact, and I like to use like hard data to know that what I'm shooting, what I'm getting is going to be correct. So by using all these different features, I'm able to get a really, really perfect looking exposure and looking image right in camera, and there's never any guesswork. So I really, really love that about the C100. So one of the best features about the C100 is also one of the biggest knocks on the C100, and that is image quality. So yes, the C100 does not shoot in 4K. However, it has a 4K sensor that is being downsampled to 1080p in camera. So what does this mean? Basically what's happening is you're getting the sharpness and the quality of that 4K sensor, of that 4K image, but you're not having to deal with 4K file sizes. So for most people, myself included, on my A6300, I shoot in 4K, but then I'm delivering everything in 1080p. Now I know that some people are shooting in 4K and delivering in 4K, but a lot of times people are shooting in 4K, delivering in 1080p. The only disadvantage to that is you're dealing with these big, massive 4K files in order to get that sharpness and quality and extra image quality out of the cameras, and then you're delivering it in 1080p. So essentially the C100 is doing that work for you, compressing it using a very efficient codec like I was talking about to give you a very small file size and giving you a really great, super sharp image that is less than a quarter of the file sizes of those big actual 4K files. Now, yes, you don't have the ability to punch in, and it's not necessarily like a one-to-one sharpness quality difference, but honestly, for what I'm doing, for weddings, for YouTube, for the different corporate things I'm doing, the image quality coming out of this looks amazing. It looks really, really good. Along with the actual sharpness and stuff like that, which honestly I don't think is that important at the end of the day when it comes to brides and YouTube and after compression and stuff like that. You get the Canon color science and the ability to use the Canon lenses. So for me, having been in the Canon ecosystem for years, the ability to use all my L series lenses, which I think have a really great tone to them and look really great when it comes to skin tones, and just the Canon color science. Canon is known for having some of the best color science in the game, and it's especially really great when it comes to skin tone. So I just think that the image quality that I get out of my C100 looks really, really great right out of camera. I don't have to do very much grading to it at all. The skin tones look really good. It looks very natural. It's very warm, and I just think that it looks really, really good. So yes, if you were to do a side-by-side comparison between the A7S II or the GH5 and the C100, the C100 probably wouldn't win that battle, but it's definitely really, really close. And for the small file sizes and the ease of use of everything and just the streamlined workflow, I think the C100 holds up really, really well. And then another advantage the C100 has is that it's great in low light. It's not as good as the A7S, which is, crazy good in low light, but it's definitely significantly better than something like the GH5 with the micro four thirds sensor, which has a little bit harder of a time in low light. So I would say with the C100, you can shoot it very comfortably up to 8,000 ISO. On the C100 Mark II, I'll shoot it all the way up to 10,000 ISO and be very comfortable. Now, obviously, lighting things is very important, and you shouldn't rely on high ISO performance to save your butt from just having dark scenes, right? Obviously, quality of light is really important, and shooting things at normal ISOs is what I'm normally at. I very rarely shoot at 8,000 or 10,000 ISO, but wedding days are very unpredictable and you never really know. Just earlier this year, they had the cake was in a very dark corner of the reception hall, very far away from the dance floor where I had my lights set up, and I just did not have time to move the light. So when I got over there, the only thing that was lighting this was literally like 3 or 4 candles. So I had to, jack it up to 10,000 ISO, shooting at 1.2 on my 50mm lens, and I was able to make it work. Did it look great? Would it have looked better to have lit it? Sure. But you never really know what's going to happen on a wedding day. It's very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. So I love the ability to go to those higher ISOs when necessary, but I also just love that the image quality looks really, really great all across the board. So those are the reasons why I really love the C100. But again, like all cameras, the C100 is definitely not perfect. It does have, some cons. It doesn't have 4K, which is sort of a bummer. Again, you get the quality of the 4K, I would say, but it would be nice to be able to shoot true 4K sometimes. It doesn't have a touchscreen. It doesn't shoot 10-bit 422 like some other cameras do. It does have autofocus and dual pixel autofocus, which is great, but it's limited to just a small box in the center, which is kind of unfortunate. It does shoot log. It shoots C-Log, Canon's log format, which isn't necessarily as great as some other log formats. You know, S-Log3, which is Sony's log format, is one of the, you know, the best log formats I think you can shoot in. C-Log is good. It's not as good. I don't shoot in C-Log. I don't shoot in log for most things that I do, so it's great. And of course, the weight, the overall size and weight of the camera. It is a big, heavy camera compared to a mirrorless camera or even a DSLR. But compared to the C300, the C500, a lot of the other cameras like sort of in this camera cinema range, it is actually considered very, very small. So that's all sort of a relative thing, I would say. So who is this camera for? I would say that this is the perfect run and gun camera. If you're in a lot of situations where you're not able to really control the light and you have a variety of things you need to do, from long takes to short takes to low light to bright sun to kind of everything in between, I love this C100 because it helps me to cover a wide range of situations and know I can handle them very confidently without really anything extra. I don't need to buy a cage. I don't need to buy an external monitor. I don't need to buy anything else really. I know that it's all going to be worked right out of the box, and the C100 is going to give me what I need. So for me, again, the biggest things are going to be the battery life, not to worry about that. The small file sizes, which is great for weddings, which, you know, are long events. Just all the different buttons, the functionality of those pro video features, all this kind of rolled into one is for me why I just really love using the C100s. Now, again, it's not without its faults. It's not perfect. I'm not trying to say that it's perfect. I promise that I'm not. I'm just explaining to you the reasons why I really love the C100 and why I think that it's a great camera. So if you're out there and you're considering the C100, you have some questions about it, let me know. Leave a message down in the comments below. I have the C100 Mark I as well as the Mark II. And I think I'm going to do a separate video on kind of the differences and if the Mark II is worth it and all that sort of stuff. But I would say if you're just getting started in filmmaking and you only have a $2,000 budget, the C100 is a great option. It's held up really well since 2012, which again, I think is crazy. And it's just going to give you a lot of really great functionality that you're going to be hard pressed to find in a camera for the same price. All right, so you guys have it. Those are just some of my thoughts on the C100, why I think it's a great camera for weddings, why I personally use it, and hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you did, go ahead and give this video a like. That'd be super appreciated. And if you like this video a lot and you want to see more like it, go ahead and subscribe down below. That would be super awesome. So that's all I have for you guys today. This has been Tyler from the Harringtons, and I'll catch you in the next one.